So, hey friends, nice to meet you all. Just a little quick hello to you all. Thanks for your time today. So as John was saying, I'm going to kind of take you through some of the lessons I've learned over the last few years, and a bit about my first quick introduction, a bit of background, some key lessons that I've learned. So we've got about 50 minutes today. Going to go through introduction and background, about 10 minutes, lesson learned about 20 minutes, and then we are going to allow quite a lot of time at the end for questions. But feel free to kind of jump in, raise hands, post something in the chat. I'll try and fill those questions as we go. If we don't get to some of those questions, or if you have any questions after this presentation or after the meeting, feel free to kind of reach out, and I'm happy to have a chat over email or arrange time for a call. So with that being said, let me just resize this. Okay, so introduction. So I'm Karsten, names are important. So I'm going to sprinkle in some of the lessons I've learned along the way. So just generally, like, I really struggle with people's names, but I think I've kind of built this little kind of tactic in my own mind about how to remember somebody's name. So when you shake their hands, you look into their eyes, you say the name back to them, and then you repeat in your head 3 times. If you do that, you'll definitely remember somebody's name. So I think being human and kind of building those kind of personal or relationships with people, I think if you can get their name to begin with, it's kind of saves a lot of awkwardness down the line. So another thing is just, I'm going to pause for questions along the way. I think this is another lesson learned when you're giving a presentation, is just basically give the audience, give the room space to ask questions. And if you have slides in your deck that you pause for questions, it allows you to basically control the pace of the meeting, and it will hopefully stop people interrupting you when you're trying to maybe deliver a point or you're trying to communicate something else. So I always have these kind of placeholder slides across a presentation that allows me to kind of take questions when I'm ready to take them. So that's just another little lesson learned. So quick background, I'm from Harrogate. I now live in Seattle. I'm from north of England, little town called Harrogate. It's kind of a farmer town, little town. I don't know really how I got to work in San Francisco of head of design of a big technology company. Wasn't really something that I should be doing. It kind of felt like when I was growing up, barely had the internet. The internet wasn't really a thing yet. Barely have Wi-Fi in Harrogate, it feels like, but it's a very beautiful place, and I love going home. And when I do go home, I'm like, why did I ever leave? But San Francisco and Seattle have treated me really well so far, so I'm going to stay in America for a bit longer. So just when we started, I'm kind of one of 4 boys, single mum, entrepreneurial mum. We weren't very well behaved, but that's where I started. And I just, like, when I was younger, I just accepted that I wasn't an academic. I was good at sport and I was good at art, and I was just drawing a lot. It was just very clear very early on. And I think that was very advantageous to me. If you know what you're good at, or you know what you want to go and do, you can kind of travel in a straight line to kind of get to where you want to get to. Next up, I discovered my first computer. I spent all my childhood savings on it. My mum wasn't very happy about it, but I think it's worked out pretty well in the long run. I discovered Illustrator and Photoshop, and I was just fascinated how I could take my sketches and move them online onto a computer and make them look very professional and very perfect. And I just learned from a very young age that I could earn not good money, but small amounts of money here and there on graphics, branding, posters, things like that. And I just got very good at understanding how a computer works and understanding how design software works. That's kind of how it all kind of started. I went to university in Newcastle. It was great. I didn't get great results at university, but what I did really take advantage of was the space to learn, the space to kind of use my computer, the space to do tutorials, the space to read all these books. And the library actually had a 10-book limit. And I was always very upset. And I was that kid with the backpack with like 10 books in the bag and like lugging that like back and forth to university and back and forth to campus. So that's why I think I really enjoyed university. Did some placements while I was up in Newcastle, then in Germany, then got my opportunity in London, and moved down 2 weeks after I graduated on my own. It was pretty scary. I was only planning to go for a year, but ended up staying in London for nearly a decade. And another lesson that I've learned along the way at this early stage in my career, it was just about being prolific. Like if I look back at the standard of some of the work, obviously it's not the best, but I learned by doing a lot of things and by practicing and just not undervaluing like the need to do a large volume of something before you're actually going to get good at it. So just continue to kind of just continued repetition and practice. I don't really think you can cheat this part of your career, or I think you've got to get those 10,000 hours before you get good at anything. And that's generally what I spent my first couple of years doing, is just a lot of design work. So after 10 years, I got somewhat good at what I did. Well, I felt I did. But it took a long time, you know, and just having that level of patience and perseverance to kind of keep going. It was hard at times. It wasn't always fun. But I did get better at what I did, which was the whole plan of going to London. So at this moment in time, I can't remember exactly what year this was, maybe about 9-10 years ago. Dribbble was like an invite-only platform, very similar to like TikTok today in terms of like you can get Dribbble famous, and a lot of American companies started to approach me for contract work and then longer contract work, and I was doing that at the weekend as well as a full-time job. It was a lot, but I don't regret it. I got introduced to quite a lot of people, started flying to America for business, and eventually a company wanted me to kind of move to America full time. And that was always my dream as a young kid, go work in San Francisco in tech. And I thought it was all kind of a dream, but it was real. And I eventually got to San Francisco, which was nice. So again, I was still like doing a lot of work. And so the next couple of slides are just flashing up just a few memories that I kind of pulled together over the last couple of days. And, you know, this design language today doesn't really stand up to like today's standard, you know, just patterns and UI and trends have changed, but just a lot with maps, lots of mobile stuff, lots of iteration, lots of design systems. I was pretty good at coding back then. So it was like, just actually building this design system out in Figma or in Sketch, and then actually building it out in the browser and kind of speaking that engineering language. That was very advantageous to me. I didn't love coding, but I just thought it would make me a better designer. I don't really code that much today, but I think it made me understand and better appreciate an engineer's job. And kind of my design work when I was handing it off to engineering was better informed because of that. Me giving a lunch and learn, can't remember what it was about, but good, happy days in San Francisco. Some more mobile stuff, prototyping, animation. This is just a bunch of things, data viz, again, just lots of iteration. So I'm just kind of flashing some of those kind of things up just to kind of tell a bit of a background story of like who I am, what kind of work I've done. We can talk about Axon in a little bit, but does anybody have any questions?
Karsten, what was the most exciting thing about moving to San Francisco to your dream job? Was it just that, or was, you know, what was the highlight?
Like I think we're actually going to get into this actually. Like, okay. I'm very much a goal setter, and I knew where I wanted to be when I was 21, 25, 30, 35, 40. I know my next milestone is 40 years old, and I know exactly where I want to be for that in that moment in time. So I did always have that dream to go to San Francisco and work for $1 billion tech company. That's what the goal was for me. And I feel like that's helped me get there because I knew what I wanted. A lot of people kind of stumble through the careers, don't actually know what they actually want. But I was very clear in my mind what I wanted. And I think that stems from like my admiration for Johnny Ives and at Apple. You know, he went to Newcastle University similar to me. I think he really set the stage for British or English designers breaking into America. Everybody wanted the next Johnny Ives. Probably people I would like to have thought those American companies thought I was Johnny Ives. So it's just like I think he just like was the person that everybody looked up to in my day when I was growing up, starting my career, and I just wanted to kind of be him. So that's kind of how I kind of knew that was the right move for me. At the time, I did actually get another opportunity to go back to Germany, but I chose to come to the States instead. And it's been, I only planned to come for 6 months as a experiment. And I've been here for nearly 7 years, and I've really enjoyed it. So I wouldn't change it. Will I ever move back to England? I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I haven't decided.
I think a lot of Brits in the US we have very similar stories. We come for a short time. I mean, I came initially for 3 months, and that was 20 years ago. I'm never leaving. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, that's so funny. I don't know what my mum would think about that, because I also, when I went to London, I said, Mum, I'm only going for a year. It's just an experiment. It's just to get my career off the ground. And I was there for 10 years, and then I never moved back. I just moved further away. But that is life. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Let's keep going. This is when I need a second screen, you know? So some lessons learned, some do's and don'ts. And I've broken that out into 3 categories. Things in which I knew when I was younger. And a lot of this was based on a book I read by somebody I actually worked with. He was the CFO at Axon. And it's a book about all the things that you wish you knew at the start of your career. So definitely like leaning into some of the inspiration there. And then basically like what it's like to lead high performing teams that are, you know, the majority of the time now it's like at least semi-remote or entirely remote. And how do you kind of keep that performance and culture high when you're not all in the same space or city? And then some bonus points at the end. So things I wish I knew when I was younger. So we'll go one by one. So this was a really hard lesson for me. When I was younger, I was very competitive. I was competitive against other designers. I wanted to show my manager, my boss, the company, that I'm the go-to designer. I'm the best designer at this company, even when I was just starting my career. That was naive and did not help me in my career development. If I went back, my role shouldn't be like, look how proficient and prolific I am in design software and look how much money I can earn in this company. It should have been actually more of a team mindset and supporting others and actually shining a great light on my manager and the designers around me. I was never actively shooting other designers down, or it was never to that level of competitiveness, but I wasn't helpful. I didn't provide my time. I didn't see it as my job, my role to help other people with their problems. I was so fixated on my own problems and my own projects. And I think if I went back, I would definitely do that different. My mindset today is the complete opposite of that. And I think there's always that quote around if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And at Axon, we have a company value called join forces, and it's actually a fundamental attribute that you need to be and need to have to be successful on my team and at the wider company. Number 2, pick a manager, not a job. So this isn't black and white, but when I was younger, I often picked the job. And I think that's fair, reasonable, and natural, but you should try and pick the manager. Where I've enjoyed my work most and when I've done the most growth is when I had absolute admiration for my manager or my boss. If you're working somewhere today and you don't look at your manager and boss with admiration, you don't have to want to be exactly the same as that person. But if there are attributes or things that you kind of admire or want to grow into, that's going to be very hard. That's going to limit your growth. So you're going to have to marry or pair the job with the manager. Most people who leave companies is because they don't admire or don't get on with their manager. That's the main reason people leave a company. So that, I think there's just a balance there where I was just looking at the job and not necessarily looking at, oh, I want to go and work under this person. And then once you worked under somebody who's really good at what they do and give you a lot of time and coach you to get to the next level and they make you feel like a world beater. Once you've had that, you really see like why I would say pick the manager, not the job. Next up. So kind of touched on this before, but this is something that I think holds people back. People make the excuse of, well, they're just more talented than me. That it comes naturally to them. Oh, you're good at design or presentations or this attribute because it comes naturally to you. And it's just not true. I think in any walk of life, any discipline, you'd be surprised how hard that person's worked to become great. And I think there might be something in talent, but I think it's 90% practice, 10% talent. So Just know, be patient, work at it, you'll get better. Another thing that I saw in myself and some of the more greener designers on teams that I've worked is the lack of focusing on understanding the problem. They're all into this shiny new Figma thing and the way this thing animates and this cool new style for a button. That's really important, and to execute on that, great. But just the lack of truly understanding the problem you're solving for, truly getting into the customer's shoes. I think that's something that I was short on early in my career. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I run a lot. I love running. I love and hate running, but I do run a lot. And so we often talk about sprints in tech, right? Oh, there's this 2-week sprint, and we're going to do this, and we got this many story points, and this is our velocity, this is our capacity, this is our burn down rate. You know, everything how you track work. We often talk in sprints, but what I'm trying to condition the team is there's no point of working really hard for 2 weeks and then taking 2 weeks off because you're tired. So find your threshold. Like, how many hours do you want to work a day? What makes you happy? Some people want to work 12 hours a day. Other people want to work 6 hours a day. Find what works for you and be consistent and predictable about that over a month, a quarter, a year, a decade. That is way more valuable, and you'll rack up way more hours with that mindset rather than just going crazy and not sleeping for 4 days to finish this piece of work and then you're broken for a week. That's not going to get you where you want to get to. So find what's the right pain threshold and work-life balance that you can be consistent over a long period of time. And measuring your design like against business objectives. And so why do I say this is sometimes I think we lose sight that we have these great jobs as designers because it's just a charity or whatever. Like, our job as a designer is to basically increase bottom line and make the business money. That's why they hire it, not just because it's a charity and we want some designers to make I don't know. So just don't be naive with what you're there to do as a business. We're all there to make money, and you've got to make money for the company. And I think keeping that front and center and having that pragmatic mindset will help you have impact and be valuable for the company you work at. Lastly, just before we move on, focus on your strengths. So a lot of the time, I think at school and stuff, and also some performance reviews and some companies look at it this way. It's like, oh, well, this person isn't great at all of these competencies across this like ladder, like leveling dock, so they can't get promoted. And I think I can somewhat understand that. You can't have gaping holes in competencies, but I think you should really focus on your strengths as well. If you're great at like being user-centric or research or prototyping or animation or whatever the thing is, it's okay. Like, just know that's your superpower. And like, when I'm building a team, I'm not saying this person has to be great at all these things. This person, it's across the team. You're looking for those spread of skills. So if somebody is very good at discovery and getting something off the ground and coming up with loads of different ideas and whiteboarding, great. And if somebody's really good at execution, really good in design systems, super technical in design software, and can kind of be very proficient and kind of take some of that low fidelity and build that prototype out for user testing, like between that pair of designers or that pair of humans, the output is actually really good. So you're not just looking at, like, when you're looking at your team or when I'm looking at hiring somebody, I have a specific skill set that I'm looking for. And if that individual has spent a lot of time on their strength and they're very good at that thing, they've probably got a higher chance of getting hired than somebody who's just bang average at everything. Okay, gonna keep going here. So this is me, Keep Trucking, a company I used to work for. And this is me being happy at work. And I know it's hard. Sometimes life sucks and sometimes you're not on best form, right? And things happen in life that are hard to deal with, sure. But my point of view here is to be great at something, you've got to be happy, because you're not going to be able to you're not going to have that consistency. People aren't going to love working with you. You're not going to be able to build those relationships. You're not going to be a bar raiser for culture. All those kind of things. If you're not in a happy mind, and balancing work and play and making sure that you're spending enough time playing golf or tennis or whatever you want to go and do, you're going to have a lower ceiling in terms of how far you can get. So it sounds a very simple one, but life is too short to work in a team of people who aren't happy and are miserable. And my goal is when somebody arrives in the office and meets my team, they can see the great work and the standard and the quality of the output, but they can also see that we're actually most of the time enjoying it and having a good time doing it. And I think that's also a good way to retain staff. Okay, so I mentioned it before, this is just a quick photo of living in customer shoes. So this is from Driver Appreciation Day. You don't need to know exactly what that is, but unless you spend time talking to customers, observing user behavior, without that as a foundation in your work life, you're not going to be in a position where you can make those informed decisions quickly. Everything, oh, well, I have to go and research and test this. Where if you just live in with the customer as much, getting as many hours as you can under your belt in terms of we call it VOC, voice of customer, and spending time with customers, it's just going to allow you to make those decisions. So once you've been at the company for a few years, you're going to be able to make informed decisions quickly. So this is just a kind of flip book of a bunch of customers when I was working. These are all truck drivers. And every time I was making a design decision, I had one of these people in mind. And it was well, what would Bob think? What would Jill think? And that's how we looked at it as a team. I've never been a truck driver. I know nothing about trucking. So I had to go in deep and kind of build this kind of foundational knowledge that allowed me to make good decisions. This was something I threw in last night. This is a quote from Scheffler, who is the #1 golfer in the world right now. And this is just about being patient. And it's not always going to be plain sailing, but be patient, be consistent, and you'll eventually get to where you want to get to. Pausing for questions.
Yeah, Karsten, something, and this is, very personal, something that I had to learn and wish I knew when I was a lot younger is be open to criticism. I think when you're younger, it's really hard to have your work critiqued, to have your personality critiqued, but really knowing where you've made mistakes, knowing where you fall down, that's, I learned that the criticism is good because that for me is a learning opportunity. How did you develop your openness to criticism?
I think I was incredibly bad at this when I was young. I think I was incredibly bad because I used to slave and work so hard on something. I got very attached to it, and that was where I was probably going wrong. So I think for me, it's the team mindset. It's the output of the team that I began to care about most, rather than my individual contributions. And the other thing is just as you said, I think you don't do very much learning or growth when somebody pats you on the back and says, good job. What have you learned at that point? You haven't learned that much. So to have that growth mindset and to learn new things and accept that kind of feedback, especially if it betters the work and betters the output of the team and the company, I think I started to kind of learn that, or kind of change my mindset in that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if there's anything else in terms of let me kind of sit on that for a second. I'll probably have to say on it.
And then, Karsten, just going back to what you said about focusing on strengths rather than weaknesses. As headhunters in this business, one of the things that we hear a lot is that our clients want T-shaped people. Now, I know you know what that means, but T-shaped person is someone that has very broad knowledge, really specific experience or deep experience in one area. So I agree with you. It's absolutely right to focus on strengths, and it's okay as well, because if that person is to become a part of the team, that strength is valuable, providing it's paired or tripled with other experiences.
Yep, completely agree. Okay, let's keep going. My mind's just thinking about, how did I kind of change my mindset and like accept critique? I really want to come back with something useful there, but it'll come to me. Moving on to the next section. So what's it like leading a high-performing team, a remote team? What are the things I've learned along the way of doing that, right? So let's see here. Oh, 2 came up. So lead by example. I touched on this about being positive and bringing your best self to work. And like every Monday morning when we jump on that execution call and we talk about the priorities for the week, my job, I'm always in the mindset, I've got to set the tone for the week. If I'm upbeat and I'm positive and I have a can-do attitude, my team have got that kind of, this is the expectation. This is like, and you'll be amazed how that kind of snowballs across the team. If you're the manager and you're leading a team and you're low energy and negative, even so sometimes you feel low energy and negative, that's like, I think that just sets the tone and sets the culture. I think a lot of people fall in the trap of saying, I don't like the energy or the culture of this company or team. And they don't look inwards, they look outwards. And I've always asked, like, could I make it better? What can I do to kind of change that culture and that energy? So always ask yourself, what can you do to contribute and fix that problem before just pointing fingers at other people? This is a really important one. So when you move into management, it's somewhat hard to delegate. It's like, I know how to do this job. That looks like a fun project. I would do this more efficiently than this other person. Why don't I just do it? And so it's very hard to delegate, and you worry about the standards slipping, and you start comparing your own output to somebody else's. It's completely the wrong way to do it. So like, you've got to let people grow and make their own mistakes, but you can set up those kind of guardrails in terms of document the process, set expectations, say, this is how I want you to run the project. This is what our design process is. This is how you're going to document. This is how the template for giving a presentation. This is your engineering handoff template. And I think agreeing that up front and setting those expectations with your direct reports, then it allows you to kind of step back to be like, hey, well, they've got enough guidance even when I'm not there. I can step back. I want them to own the work. I want them to have autonomy. I want them to make efficient decisions. And me being in the way all the time doesn't lead to efficiency. I can tell you that. So I think this has allowed me to kind of step back from trying to make every decision and kind of building that kind of trust. But it's definitely hard earlier on in your career. Reevaluate the definition of perfect. Talk about this all the time. It's a bit like this slide deck, John. Perfect is the highest quality you can reach with the time allowed. I've been very busy at work. I put this presentation together, right? But I only had a certain amount of time and a certain amount of hours in the day for me to get this presentation. So my definition of perfect is the highest quality you can achieve in the time allowed. Because otherwise, everything can always be better. If you had infinite amount of time to design something or build a product, maybe it could be perfect, but that's never the case. That's not realistic. And we don't live in that ideal world. So just don't get so hung up on like what perfect means to you. Focus on top performance. Again, this is a really hard one. You're running this team, right? And you can see that maybe this designer or researcher or writers, they might be struggling a bit. They're not quite smashing out of the park. So you're spending half your week in meetings, coaching, hand-holding, rewriting in every way you can to try and get that designer or that maybe underperformer up into the achieved area, or hopefully eventually to a top performer onto a promotion. But that's actually backwards. Like, I think, it's somewhat of a brutal world, but your job as a manager is to maximize the output of that team. And if you're putting 50% of your coaching hours into a low performer and not giving enough time to your high performers, because you think, they're doing pretty well. Well, how much further would they go if you gave them 50% of your time? How much more output of quality and like volume of work could we get through if you spent even more time with the top performers? So I'm not saying this is a black and white rule, but I've fallen into the trap of spending too long on trying to get somebody up to speed where they might not just be ready at that level. They might not be right for the company you work at. And you're not doing yourself justice, and you're not being fair to the other people in the team, because one person's getting way more time with you than anybody else. So just be careful that you don't fall into that trap. Doesn't mean I don't care about everybody, but I'm also, with my business hat on, it's a business, right? And that's what we're here to do. Only hire bar raisers. So this is a very obvious one, but the most impactful thing you can do at a company is hire great people. Hire people that are better than you, and don't let your kind of standards slip. And one of the ways you do this is that you have a very rigorous interview process, right? It's very thorough, and it's very hard to get on the team. And I think that is a green flag when I'm interviewing for a company and it's a real rigorous interview, right? And they're grilling me, they're asking me loads of hard questions, they're making me feel welcome. It's not like they're being rude in any way, but it's very thorough and it's very time consuming. And I'm meeting a lot of different disciplines and lots of different levels and lots of different challenges and tests and presentations, different types of questions from your own values and who you are or where you want to go. Design specific questions and exercises. So I think when you see that, know that that is a company that if you get onto that team, you're going to be sitting next to some really great people, because only if this is the interview process for everybody else, it means that they're only looking for the very best. So that's the way I look at it at Axon, especially now, is that everybody on the team has to be better. Every new hire on the team has to be better than yourself, what we already got in terms of the average across the team. So just know that this is the most impactful thing you can do as a company. Even if you're a great individual, you're only one person. You need hundreds of great people to do something that really is impactful on the world. And if that's what your goals are, don't sell yourself short. Next up, this is a bit of a kind of a point I was making before about the team is the sum of all of its parts, meaning you got to match people. And I think if somebody's very, we basically like, there's a chemistry personality thing, but there's a skill set thing. And so I'm always looking across the team, what are we short of? What skill set are we short of? Rather than always looking for that generalist. I was actually a generalist. I was pretty good at lots of different things. So there's nothing wrong with being a generalist, but I'm just saying it's like the way we hire and the way I look at building teams is a little bit different than how I evaluate an individual. That individual could be very, very good at this thing, but if I don't have a need for it on that team because I've already got somebody who's good at that thing, I'm not going to hire them. Embrace change, again, really obvious one. It's the only thing in life that is consistent is there's always change. The company could change direction, change of manager, one of your teammates leaves, all those kind of things. I think I always talk to my team about being adaptable and embracing change. There's a lot of things in your work life that you don't have control of. And so you're just going to have to accept them, even if you don't think they're fair, even if you don't agree with it, you're working for somebody else. So you just have to embrace the change when it comes, because it will come. Just some quick shots from team in San Francisco. This is my remote team in Pakistan. I've managed teams in Vietnam and India, and we now have a London office at Axon now, so probably be hiring there, so that's exciting. Pausing for questions.
Yeah, another one from me, Karsten. One of the things that we hear certainly from from sort of senior designers is that they, half of them really don't want to go into a company where they're going to have to explain or to try and sell the value of a design to their employer, and the other half are quite happy to accept that challenge. Which half are you, where are you sitting? Which half? Do you like the challenge of selling the value of design, or would you rather not had sort of take on that battle?
It's a tough question. Like, the true designer in me says, yeah, I'm always going to champion design. It's so important. But realistically, as a product builder, and that's how I see myself, I don't really necessarily see myself as a designer. I think I'm a product person. Design is where I kind of came from, but like now I'm like maybe more of a product person. I don't know. But I think we're a little bit, I don't think design can be on its high horse without engineering, without product, without research, without sales, without marketing, without all ops and manufacturing or whatever the company needs to get the thing done and get the thing shipped. It doesn't work. So I try and look at design as equal, but in a lot of occasions, a lot of companies, it isn't equal. Engineering is always going to be valued maybe higher. Design is sometimes seen as like this optional bit that you do at the end. But that really depends on what you see your job as a designer is. I think designers have a lot of executing on a known problem and a known spec that is part of the day-to-day job. But I think the best designers kind of influence the whole roadmap and the strategy of a product line. So
it's a vital ingredient.
Yeah, I think there's going to be so many times in your career that you are going to have to admit defeat a little bit. Like, I know that sounds very negative and pessimistic. I'm a big champion for design, and, you know, obviously Apple and everything like that in terms of the quality and how they've kind of changed the game, and Apple wouldn't be where it is today without the industrial and software design that they've done. But sometimes it's going to be a losing battle. So you have to figure that out in the interview process and the companies that you're working at. I look at design differently now in terms of like, I look at how we measure design, and I look at it like time on task and how intuitive it is, how many errors does this put, how do we speed up this workflow, how do we make it less clicks. That's like, I think if you can showcase and talk about design in that way, it sticks a little bit more, they get it a bit more. And I think if you can kind of bubble up the impact on design on key metrics, or we call it M&M's mission to metrics, or see some kind of ZBB initiative, if you can tie it to the business initiative, it's gonna, the penny will drop a little bit more. Yeah, but some people are just never gonna get it.
Right.
I hope not. Like, I don't know if that's too negative, but that's been my experience. Okay, we're short on time, so just very quickly, some bonus points. So as I said, set goals. I have a legendary Google Doc. It's not legendary, this just pretend, that goes back to like, I think 2010. And it's basically got all my goals for every year since 2010. And I share those goals with my family and friends, and we do this New Year kind of resolution tradition thing. And you've got to have one health goal, one happiness goal, and one career goal. And you go around the table and everybody shares their goal. And I do it with friends and family every year. And that just keeps me very accountable to those goals. A lot of people write goals down, but they don't share them with everybody. And therefore, like, they're less likely to achieve it. So when I was trying to break 3 hours in a marathon, right? I couldn't even run half a marathon in 90 minutes at the time. And it took me 7 years to complete that goal. You know, my brothers laughed at me and said, that's dumb. Why don't you go for a more realistic goal? Oh, I wanted to move to London and to America and manage a team and have this imprint and earn this amount of money and have this title, right? If I didn't write those things down, I'm less likely to get to them. So my point here is that I've got this next milestone of 40 years old. I know exactly what company I want to work for, and I know exactly what title. Money is important, but like less important. It's like more about the type of work and the imprint I'll have. I'm not saying I don't care about money, but it's just like somewhat less important right now. So I think being brave enough to share those goals is something that I would encourage you to do. This is a tough one. You are responsible for your career development. I think a lot of people think it's the manager's job. Some managers will be great at this, other managers won't. So just don't leave it to chance. Don't rely on them. Build out your own career development thing. Look at the leveling docs for your discipline. Work with your manager to kind of document wins, losses, opportunities, misses, goals for the next 6 months. Like, just don't leave that to chance. Like, take the lead on it, be proactive, and your manager will be supporting you. But some managers won't put this in place for you, so you can do it yourself. Continue to put yourself in the deep end. So just very quickly here, you do your best learning when you're in a really hard job. So the opportunities I've got, I'm like, well, I don't know if I can do that, or that's really scary, or this is going to be hard, or it is hard. But I think that's when that's really your growth really trends upwards when you're in a hard place. I've left jobs because it was too easy. I've left many jobs because it was too easy, because most jobs are hard, but like it was just too safe. It was too comfortable. So if you feel comfortable, you're probably not growing as fast as other people. Remember to smile. So this is similar to what I said before. You are the culture, you set the tone, you bring the positivity. It's amazing. Yes, as a designer, you got to have all the craftsmanship and everything like that, but just don't undervalue those people skills, that positivity that gets you actually a really long way. People say, oh, how did I get to where I got to? I often say, oh, I just worked hard and I was nice to people. Honestly, that's what I say to people. It's not because I got any talent. It's not because I'm academic. It's not because I'm really that smart in any way. I just work hard and I'm nice to people. I think that takes you a long way. This is a really hard one, especially we're in performance review season. Your job as a manager isn't to be, is to be fair, not to be nice. I want to be nice to everybody. I want success for everybody, but that's not your role. Sometimes you can't be nice, but as long as you can be fair, as a manager, sometimes you have to do hard things that you don't want to do, but the way you kind of can live with that is like, well, I've been as fair as possible with the data I've got and the things that I've seen. This feels fair to me. And as long as you can say that to yourself, you can get through those hard times. Making time zones work. So I'm managing people all over the States and then also Vietnam right now. So we have all these different time zones. My new manager is actually based in London. So I'm managing all these time zones. So what we tried to do before was like, oh, we'll do this time that works for everybody. That doesn't work at all. Actually, that time is normally like not good for anybody. It's actually like the other way around. What I try and do is I'll set time up with people who are based in the UK, people based in East Coast, West Coast, and then Vietnam. And that's more painful, more of my time, but I think that's way better than having this meeting that is 6 a.m. for somebody, 9 p.m. for somebody else, and 11 p.m. for somebody else, or whatever that kind of makeup of time zones is. And I think sometimes you need everybody in the room, but a lot of the time, like as a manager, you should be going out of your way to respect people's natural core working hours. And I think that's something, I think on time zones, people get that kind of the wrong way around. There's different ways you can do it. That's just my personal perspective. And just being grateful and not forgetting how nice a job we have. Being a designer is a very hard job, but you can get paid well. I think there's a lot of perks for working in tech and within design in terms of the glamorous offices, free food, all these kind of benefits you get with a company that other industries and other disciplines don't get. So just don't lose sight of how far you've come and don't take it for granted because it might not always be there. Okay, just a couple more slides and then we can wrap this up. This is something I put into a slide deck for my team the other day, and it was about like goal setting and going into the new year. And I just think it just really resonates with me. Pause for questions. Oh, we're going to talk quickly. Have we got enough time, John, just to spend a little bit more time?
I'm sure we have, Karsten. Go for it.
Cool. So I am at Axon. And this is kind of our moonshot goal that we're trying to achieve by the end of the decade. And it's basically, Axon were founded about 30 years ago. We started with the taser. We do the body camera. We do dispatch software. So when somebody calls for you guys 999 or for me 911, what happens? You ingest that call, you dispatch a unit. Hopefully the officer gets there and everything gets de-escalated. So we do a lot of things around the public safety, law enforcement, medical and fire space. So that's what we do. And every team's goal and every product line is contributing to this moonshot goal of reducing deaths between the public and law enforcement, gun-related deaths. So that's what I do. Founded by Rick Smith, really inspirational and let's say creative leader. And he's always got this crazy next idea. I said we'd be going 30 years. Like the taser wasn't successful for the first 20 years. We're only really getting successful now. The body camera that you'll see a little orange, yellow triangle. I've seen it on BBC News and a few other places recently. you know, people didn't want the body camera. They thought it was law enforcement or cops somewhat invading people's privacy, and it's now becoming accepted. So there's just a very interesting space to work, and there's very specific design challenges that are different about this space than anywhere else I've worked. I'll share this deck out with you so that you can maybe watch some of these videos. This is like a drone flying through the office, and this is our license plate reader, like tested out with like some fast Ferraris. And this is one of the videos I watched, which made me really want to join the company. I think I just got a question in here. Okay, thank you, Carolina. Yes, I can send the deck, no problem. Okay, we're not going to watch this right now, but please watch afterwards if you feel the need. They're playing automatically. Okay, we got to the end. Thanks so much for your time and your attention.